guys, so now I want to make sure we know all about discovered checks and discovered attacks. Now, the way I'm going to show you discovered checks and discovered attacks is through an opening trap in the Petrov opening. So we start off with our king's pawn opening, which is e4, e5, and white says, can I have the pawn please? And black says, you can if I can have one too. So they're offering mutual trade. So when I take this one, they want to take that one. Now, if they played a good move like d6 first and then they capture my pawn, that would be a good idea. But they decided to just capture my pawn right away, and we have both of these knights in the middle, which is a good thing for the knights, but not such a good thing for black because of the discovered check coming up. So this is the famous trap that you guys all have to know when playing this opening. So white says, knight, where are you gonna go? Are you gonna go to f6? Are you going to be defended with the pawn? And if you do defend yourself with the pawn, let me ask you another question. Where are you going now when I kick you away with the pawn? And when the knight goes away, we have our first example of a discovered check. So how does the discovered check work? Like any other tactic, I want to attack two things at the same time, my two meatballs. And why is it called discovered check? Well, you see, my knight will discover the queen, and my queen will discover the king and say check. So this is like Christopher Columbus, and that's like Jean Piaget discovering Canada. And the point of doing the discover check is when the king finds a way to block the check, we can always get the queen. And nobody saw our knight coming because before the knight was blocking the queen. But when the knight decided to come there, first of all, nobody can save the queen now. And even if the queen tries to save the king from the check, the knight can always eat her anyways. And nobody saw the queen coming because she was hiding in behind that white knight. And so we could do another discover check. We could actually go somewhere like g6 and say, hi rook, I bet you didn't see me coming. And the black pawn cannot take because once again that's a check. But that's only going to get us maybe 5 ice creams at best, and probably our knight will end up being lost. And so why do I need 5 ice creams if I can get 9? That's why I would actually go to c6 and get the queen instead. Now, what's the difference between a discovered check and a discovered attack? In this case, I managed to also say check when I jumped off with my knight. But if, for example, that was another piece, let me change the position just a bit, and then you guys will see a perfect example of a discovered attack. So now I'll put that knight over there, that queen will go somewhere here, and this is a decent example. I just want to put this rook on h4. Okay, so now I will take away this knight, and I will say hi to the rook. The knight goes back. He came from e5 to f3. He says hi to the rook. And when the rook decides to save herself, unfortunately for the bishop, the queen will say hi to the bishop and eat the light square bishop. Now, that bishop could be on e7, doesn't really matter, as long as I could attack both of the pieces at the same time. So this is my Christopher Columbus, and that's my other explorer who discovers the rook, right? And you can't save both pieces at the same time. You can move the bishop back, but then I'll take the rook. You can have my knight, but I still got the exchange from you, the 2 points, right? And the difference between discovered check and a discovered attack is that in the check, the king is one of the pieces that have been discovered by my queen, for example, right? And if this was a bishop, by the way, and the bishop is doing the discovered check, one thing you may want to ask yourself is what black piece is right now on a dark square? So imagine there was a knight on h6, this bishop is gone, and there is a king that's just asking to be checked, right? Now I look all around the board for pieces on black squares, especially black pieces, which is what I'm hunting for. And I look at all these pawns, they're on light squares, light squares, light squares, light square, light square. I look at the bishop, and a lot of people would say, check, I did it, I found the discovered check. But the bishop is defended, so it's not gonna win you much, right? But then you look for other things on the dark squares, and you discover both the knight and the queen. And some people would say, check, I found the discovered check, but that only gets you 3 ice creams. While if you found the queen, you'd say check. The queen cannot block. And when the king decides to run away, thank you for your queen. And that's the point of a discovered check and a discovered attack. To surprise the opponent because he didn't see our queen coming, and to attack two things at the same time. So even if he decides to run away with one, he can't save both